Luxury. Get a free shampoo with every cut. Book your appointment today at fantasticsands.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Clippers don't have to worry about a game-time decision tonight for Kawhi Leonard. The team found out Tuesday afternoon that their leading scorer will not play in Game 5 against Dallas at Crypto.com. Kawhi still has inflammation in his right knee. This will be the third game Kawhi has missed in the first-round series. The Clippers are 2-0 in this series without Kawhi. In the 2 wins, the Clippers are averaging 21 more points and shooting 50%. Don't get it twisted. No one in Clippers Nation is saying the team can contend for the Western Conference title without Kawhi. For the Clippers to go deep in the NBA playoffs, it's pretty much understood that they will need a healthy Kawhi Leonard. 7 p.m. tip-off tonight on TNT. After 1 month of the Major League Baseball season, Dodgers shortstop Mookie Betts leads the majors with a .377 batting average. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the fastest growing talk radio station in Southern California. Home to 50,000 watts and an audience reach of 12 million listeners. KBLA Talk 1580 is a pioneer for Black audio content, including our groundbreaking $2 million climate justice campaign and the most loyal, influential audience. According to an independent research study by the polling firm Aviterus, for the second consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the most trustworthy, reliable, and credible news source for Black audiences and beyond in Southern California. Let KBLA Talk 1580 power your advertising dollars. Our omni-channel custom marketing solutions are specifically tailored to connect with your ideal target audience. We leverage audio, podcasts, streaming, digital, social media, and local activations to get your message out to the Black community. Get in touch with our advertising team today at advertising@KBLA1580.com. That's advertising@KBLA1580.com. KBLA 1580. We've got you Black.
How do I say goodbye to what we had? The good time that made us laugh, I'll wave them back. I thought we get forever's gone away. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. I don't know.
I'm Tavis, Smiley. Welcome to the final hour of our program today. And as I mentioned moments ago, pleased to bring you two conversations in this hour. On the B side of this hour, conversation with Amber Cabral, inclusion strategist, and we'll talk about why would it be easier and frankly more preferred to just help folk become good humans and thereby shift the narrative on DEI. DEI is taking on the chin these days. And we'll talk about that on the backside of this hour. We commenced this hour, though, with America's most visible death doula, Alua Arthur, who joins us live in studio to talk about how reframing our perspectives on death can help us lead better, more fulfilling, and authentic lives. Pleased to have Alua Arthur in studio. Alua, how are you today?
I'm well, thank you.
It's good to see you. Thank you for coming in. Let me jump right in and make the most of the time that we have. This question, I think, for starters, why is it, and I'm not naive in asking it, but why is it that we have such difficulty in our lives talking about the D word?
Death?
Yeah.
It's painful.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It makes us uncomfortable. We're so hardwired toward wanting to know things and being able to control things, and death throws everything that we think that we know into chaos. It undercuts our perception of ourselves as the main character in the story. It is sad. We miss the people that we love that are gone. We lose everything that we've ever known and ever loved. It makes us uncomfortable, and I can understand that for sure.
What are the ways that you suggest to get more comfortable with the conversation about death? We're going to dig a little deeper as we move through this half hour. But I asked that question at the outset in part because it ain't like we can avoid it.
Right.
We're all born. We're all going to make that transition. At some point, we will do that dance with mortality. So that moment comes for all of us. So it's one of those things that, since we can't avoid it, we might as well figure out ways to get more comfortable talking about it, preparing for it. When you talk to people, what do you suggest to them in terms of ways to get more comfortable having an uncomfortable conversation?
Well, for starters, I think many of us don't talk about it because we're afraid if we talk about it, we're going to make it happen. Mm-hmm. That whole thing like, shh, don't mention it because if you do, you're going to bring it on us. But the reality is it's coming anyway. And not talking about it only makes us ill-prepared when the time actually comes. So what works best is if we make ourselves uncomfortable to have the conversation like you were suggesting by a number of things, either flat out saying what's on your heart, acknowledging that somebody's ill and maybe they're in the process or getting closer to death. If folks want to talk to their elderly parents or relatives or loved ones about it, they can always hinge it on the death of another family member or a celebrity of some sort. I remember after Aretha Franklin died, I was in a group of folks that had some elders within the group, and one of the elders said, well, they changed her outfit so many times, and I don't want that. And I said, well, then what do you want? And it opened the conversation, one that she hadn't had before. She was about 85 years old. And so there's a number of ways that we can bring it in. We just have to do it thoughtfully and carefully.
I want to phrase this the right way. I think what I'm trying to ask you is how we go about reframing our perspective on death. And it seems to me, and I could be wrong here, and if I'm wrong, you can disabuse me of this notion, but it seems that if we could be successful in reframing our perspective of death, that in fact might make it easier to have these conversations that are necessary and that are relevant. So the question then is, how do we go about reframing our perspective on what death is, what death means, again, since none of us is going to avoid it ultimately?
Sure. What happens, I think, generally, and you tell me if I'm getting to the point of what you're asking, is that often when we think about death and dying, we think of it in the most negative terms. Since none of us know actually what happens after we die, the human impulse is to fill it with dread and fear and terribleness and fire and brimstone, whereas none of us actually know what happens. And so we may think about it joyfully. And the ideas that we have around what dying feels like, the process of the body, can be handled through hospice and medication and medical care teams. So pain shouldn't be present. We can reframe it and think of it as joyfully as we can, as peacefully as we can, as opposed to the scary, sad, dark things that we normally think of.
Now, you got right to it, which leads me to my next question, which is how one would approach thinking about death joyfully. I like the word, but it's a lot easier said than done. How does one think about death joyfully?
You can think of the things that would bring you peace. Can I share mine?
Please.
My idea is to die outside on a deck in my own home, in my own bed, with no machines around, with the people that I love nearby, chatting amongst themselves. I want to watch the sunset for the last time. I want to be comfortable and warm and cozy. I want to have all my affairs in order. I want to die in surrender. When I think of it that way, it brings me some peace. While I don't know what the ride ahead will be, and I certainly don't know how it is that I'll die, if I can think of it in a way that makes me feel peaceful within myself, then it allows me to enter into the conversation from a less heightened place.
Yeah. I've had any number of conversations over the course of my career trying to help people with information to allow them to get their affairs in order before that moment happens. We all know these horror stories. I've seen them many times where somebody passes and the business has just not been handled. My sense is, I want to get your take on this when we come forward, as we talk about reframing our perspectives on death and how that might help us lead better, more fulfilling and authentic lives. I want to get your take when we come forward on my view, which is that the reason why so many of us don't have our affairs in order when we die, you see where I'm going, I see you shaking your head already, is that we don't even want to think about it.
Exactly.
You can't approach dealing with something that you didn't even want to think about. So we'll talk about that part with, again, one of the most visible death doulas in the country. And I could have started this conversation explaining what a death doula does, but we'll do that as well when we come forward. Her name is Alua Arthur. I'm Tavis Smiley, and we're glad to have you tuned in.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Hey y'all, Mona Swain here from Target's new YouTube series, My Cart is Full, where we feature Black founders and creators highlighting their connection to our community. As an actor and content creator, I love using my voice to inspire young Black women who look like me. When it comes to feeding my shine, seeing myself reflected in Black-owned and founded products at Target brings me joy. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure. Learn more at target.com/Black Beyond Measure.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler.
I'm Cookie Serratos and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze Fruit on the Go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Call Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well-trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone, and should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. So I take ZQuil.
ZQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZQuil nights. Explore our products at ZQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
More of Tavis Smiley and Alua Arthur coming your way right now. She is, again, one of the nation's most visible and well-known death doulas. We had last week on this program a doula in the maternal space. And so we defined that last week. So I think the audience, I got a bright audience anyway, I think they probably get what you do as a death doula. But for those who have never heard that term, DOULA, much less associated with the word death, a death doula, tell me what the role, Alua Arthur, of a death doula is. And we'll get back to the question I wanted to ask a moment ago.
A death doula is a supportive person who does all of the non-medical and holistic care and support of the dying person and the circle of support through the entire process, handling the practical, emotional, spiritual needs of the dying person. And when I say dying person, though, I mean anybody who has come into awareness of their mortality. So even somebody who's healthy has started saying, hey, one day I'm going to die, I should get it together. We can help them complete comprehensive end-of-life plans. When somebody knows what it is that they're going to be dying of, like they have a disease, we can help them create the most ideal death for themselves under the circumstances. And then after a death, we can help the family members wrap up affairs of their loved one's life.
Let me ask, to the point you just made a moment ago, when you use the word dying person, I hear that phrase loud and clear. I'm curious, though, as to whether or not your practice is primarily made up of one or the other. People who contact you, wise enough to contact you early on, or whether most of your calls come later on.
It's about half and half.
But oh wow.
Yeah.
As I sit on this side of the table, I didn't expect you to tell me the number to be that high.
It absolutely is. You know, a lot of people know that you should get a will or something of the
Yeah.
sort when you're preparing for the end of life.
Yeah.
And often a will come with some advanced directives or some things to check off on the back. And people want to do a lot more informed decision making. And so they'll seek out a death doula to really tease out those ideas and then to plan all the rest of the things that we don't think about until somebody has died and we realize that all the information we needed to wrap up their affairs died with them.
Yeah. How do you navigate people through that particular space, as we say that part, where the person has died? And if they didn't want to deal with getting affairs in order before the person died, they really ain't trying to deal with that now. So I'm doing it out of order, but let me just ask you how you emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, existentially, you tell me, help people navigate through that part when the person is dead and there's a bunch of stuff that should have been handled that wasn't.
Well, there's a lot of factors that go into it. Primarily, what I want to do is attend to their grief because that's the primary, most important, and that's the thing that impacts generations to come when we don't make space for our grief. But then also a lot of spreadsheets, making sure that we can see very clearly everything that their life held and what it is so we can move through it methodically to make sure that we wrap up things as best as possible. It requires a lot of paperwork, a lot of bureaucracy, things that when people are not grieving, they don't want to do. But in the midst of deep grief, the last place you're trying to be is in the DMV. You know what I mean? And so we're just trying to support folks through this really difficult time. First, dealing with their grief, and then next, the logistical aspects.
So was I right in my assessment then that one of the reasons, perhaps one of the primary reasons that we don't have our affairs in order is that if we don't want to think about dying, we really ain't trying to address it on paperwork?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right about that. So many people just push it off until it's too late. One of my more recent end-of-life planning clients came to me. She was 57. She'd had a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in her lungs that landed her in the hospital for 3 weeks. Now, she thought she was going to die, and afterward came out shook and was ready just to get her affairs in order. None of us know when it's coming, and that's not a terrifying fact. Rather, it's an invitation to get ourselves as ready as we can right now. And when I say ready, I mean the practical things as well as emotionally, and get right with our lives as well.
Yeah. I think this audience knows this. I'm not name dropping. I'm just following up on a name that you used earlier. Aretha Franklin was a dear friend of mine, and I think this audience again knows that. Prince was another very close friend of mine. I think this audience knows that as well. Those are just two examples. I could certainly give you others, but since you mentioned Aretha, I'm following up on that name. But how shocked are you, or how unnerved by you? You fill in the blank. You are what? Alua Arthur is what when she sees these stories of persons who make that transition and they ain't got their stuff in order?
I'm saddened.
You're saddened.
I'm really saddened.
And you're saddened in what regard?
Well, because of all of the grief on grief it causes when people die without their affairs in order, and with folks with estates as large as both of they had catalogs of music and houses and all this stuff to deal with. When it doesn't happen, it causes so much fighting within families. It causes a lot of rupture. It causes a lot of pain. There's just so much work to get through when they are also grieving. And to get very clear about what it is that you desire is an act of love. You know, I'm caring for and I'm loving for my descendants when I say, hey, do this with my body, do this with my clothing, do this with my paperwork, do this with my everything. It's the last act of love I can do by preparing people for the end of life.
I want to come in a moment to that beautiful phrase you used moments ago, creating space for grief. I want to talk about space for grief in a second. But take me inside. I know you've had many of these situations. Take me, you mentioned the infighting in families that often happens after people are dead. Richard Pryor told the joke after he burned himself, set himself on fire, went to the hospital, survived, and came back to his house. And all his family had already been there and taken all his stuff. And he had to call and cuss Negroes out. Bring my stuff back to my house. I am not dead yet. But they'd already gone to the house and fought and argued and took all his stuff. He went home and his house was empty, Richard said. And Richard Pryor was the GOAT, no question about that. But he told that joke more beautifully than I could tell it. But you take his point that they just went in and took his stuff. My question now is, as a death doula, I suspect, my word, not yours, that you've also had to play referee a number of times. Again, that's my word, not yours. But what happens inside of families? How do you help them navigate these spaces where they're in grief, but they're at each other's throats?
I think the most important thing is to acknowledge and validate the experience everybody's having. because often it's born out of grief. And some people's grief looks like anger, and some people's grief looks like sitting and crying and staring out the window. Some people's grief looks like moving very fast and getting a bunch of stuff done. Some people's grief looks like shutting up and not saying anything. And so just being able to acknowledge that somebody is grieving and making sure that we can see each other in our grief goes a long way to calming the tensions. It's one of the most often questions I get asked by folks because they've seen it themselves. I teach death doulas as well, and the death doula students that come in are always asking, how do we navigate these family dynamics? And very, very carefully, as a mediator, as somebody who can name the experience that they're having and give them something tangible to hold on to.
If I asked you to give me, and I am going to ask you to give me a profile of a death doula, who would want to be in this space? Give me a death doula profile.
Somebody who has a lot of comfort and emotional depth. Somebody who does not shy away from the full range of human emotions and can experience them themselves. Somebody who has built a personal relationship with death so that they know what their fears are, and so they don't put it on the client or the person that they're supporting. Somebody who has likely navigated some grief themselves, although it's not absolutely mandatory. Somebody who is calm in the chaos. Somebody who can be the peaceful person for other people to come and lay on when they need to.
Yeah. I'm thinking now of a particular person whose name obviously I'm not going to call. And let me just preface this by saying nobody wants to die. Even folk who take their own lives, I think ultimately don't want to die. They feel hopeless, they feel helpless, they feel a lot of different things. But I don't think people really want to die. And I'm thinking of a particular person I know who fought it all the way to the end. I mean, cried and at times lashed out and why me, and she had cancer. But she fought this thing all the way to the end. And part of what troubled me watching her fight this is that she wasn't going to make that transition in peace. Whenever that moment came, it wasn't going to be in peace. Now, we're all entitled to fight. We're all entitled to have our own emotions, our own expressions. We'll talk in a moment about, saving space for grief for those of us who remain. But the person who is making the transition, the person who is dying, has their own agency to decide how they want to navigate it. But it was painful for me to watch this person who fought this thing. And again, I don't want to speak for others. I don't know how I'm going to process that moment if and when I know it's coming, and I'm just laying there with cancer, trying to navigate my. I want to be empathetic, is what I'm trying to say here. But it pained me to watch this person wrestle with that. When you encounter, as a death doula, people who are fighting this, they're upset, they're angry, they're mad at God, they don't want to die, etc., etc. What are you saying to them in that space?
That it's okay. They are grieving. We are losing them. I'm losing that one person in my life. They are losing everybody. They're losing the only place that they've ever been in, the only ground that they've ever walked on, the only thing that they've ever known. They are losing everyone. And I can understand the rally against it. I can understand the not wanting to go. There's so much work that we can do beforehand to see if we can ease the way a little bit. But like you were saying, none of us know what it's going to be like when we get there. I mean, even all the death talk I do, I might go kicking and screaming too, But they are deeply, deeply, deeply grieving themselves.
Yeah. Now to the issue of saving space for grief. I think often in moments like these that these funerals that we participate in and conduct really aren't for the dead, the deceased. They've lived their life. They've made their transition. They've moved on. These funerals, these memorials, these gatherings are really for those of us who are alive and remain. So now I want to talk about those who remain and what you say to them about finding space, creating space, saving space for their own grief.
The funeral is a beautiful ritual that we have, and I think that it can do both things. It can honor the person that died and also create the marking of the transition of the person for those of us that are still living. Here's my life with this person, and now this is my life without, and so we have the funeral ritual in order to mark that. When supporting people through grief, I think it's really important that we remember that everybody's approach to grief is very individual, like I was saying earlier, and also that we have to do our best to not make it about us. We often want to go in there and make the experience of somebody better. You know what it's like? You're with somebody who's crying and you say, don't cry, or she's in a better place, or all the platitudes that we throw at grief, which are not helpful at all, and in fact serve to invalidate the experience of the person. Because how do you know that the best place for this person who died is not by the side of their loved one, and rather it's wherever they may be now? Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
And so we need to do our best to just show up for the people that are grieving and allow them to take the stage. We could say, you know, I'm here and it's hard and I don't know what to say, but I'm doing my best. I think that's a great place to start. But these platitudes, these don't cry, these she's in a better place, I'm sorry for your loss, they're just words that don't do much, but rather acknowledging that the death occurred is a great place to start.
Speaking of platitudes, this is the one I hate the most. And I learned the hard way, confession here, I learned the hard way many years ago to stop saying this myself. And I broke myself from saying it. We have this bad habit in moments like these of telling people to be strong.
Ooh.
I hate that. Be strong. And what I realized years ago is, and you basically teed this up, that grief is an act of love. That grief is an expression of love. So allowing people to grieve in whatever way for as long as they need to. It's going to come here and there in moments you can't expect it. But telling folk to be strong is the last thing you want to say to somebody who's going through grief. It's the one I hate the most, but that's just me.
I think I'd agree with you. It's a difficult one. And also, anybody who every day gets up and is able to still continue navigating the world, however they're doing it, when the person that they loved most, the person that they could not imagine dying is no longer there, that to me is strength. That is resilience. That's such power to be able to keep going forward every single day. And strength doesn't look like what we think it looks like. It doesn't necessarily look like, not crying. To me, to be able to allow yourself to have the emotional experience you're having and keep going is strength.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question I've asked of other friends of mine, namely friends of mine who are physicians, namely friends of mine who are ministers, clergy, rabbis, you name it. You all operate in this space frequently, but you more so than them, because a minister is not a death doula every day. That's not his or her profession. It's a part of their profession, but this is your chosen profession. How do you not let this get on you? How do you know I'm getting it, right? I can't even frame the question, but like, how do you process that your whole world is death?
Yeah, it's actually the most life-affirming thing I know.
Wow, say that again.
Being around dying is the most life-affirming thing I know.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Because when I'm in the presence of dying, I see how precious this life is. If you were to look at an orange as it was the very last time you're going to eat an orange, you'd be so much more present for the little shiny bits of oil that shoot off your fingertips, for the iridescence on your fingers, for the bite of the juice when you first bite into it. You'd be so present with it. Being around dying all the time means that I am consistently grateful for the gift of my life and that of those I love. I also spend a lot of time unpacking my experiences. I just wrote a book about them to help create some context for it. And I'm regularly in the practice of being clear about what is mine to carry and what isn't mine.
Yeah. Tell me about the book.
Oh, the book is called Briefly, Perfectly Human, and we recently made the New York Times bestseller list. I'm quite excited about that.
You should be.
It tracks my journey into death care, looks at what creating space for us to be with our mortality means, and also tracks some of my death doula clients along the way, and plenty of talk about life and death and how we do it.
I love the title.
Thank you. I mean, to me, it's an evidence of this life that we all lead. Yeah. It's brief and it's perfect, and we are human.
Briefly, Perfectly Human. It is a great title. What's your I got a minute to go here. What's your closing thought on advice to the rest of us to come to terms with this in ways that will help us, as I said earlier, lead better, more fulfilling and authentic lives?
Start the conversation.
Yeah.
If it's with yourself, start the conversation. If you have to look in the mirror and notice a few grays and say, wow, where do those come from? Start the conversation. Yeah. Be with your mortality. Be with your life. Your death is your greatest teacher. It will spur you into action. It will invite you to rest. It will tell you to say, I love you and I'm sorry and forgive me. And it will allow you to be with this gift of life for what it is, which is a very, very brief gift that we've got.
Yeah. To her last words, her book is called Briefly, Perfectly Human, now New York Times bestselling text. Her name is Alua Arthur, A-L-U-A, Alua Arthur. The book, once again, is Briefly, Perfectly Human, and this was a brief, perfect, and human conversation, and I thank you for it, Alua.
Thank you.
Good to have you on. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Thanks for joining us on the first day of May. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Georgia Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene will follow through on her effort to remove Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House. She told reporters today that she'll bring the motion to vacate the Speaker to the floor for a vote next week. She accused Johnson of doing the bidding of Democrats following the passage of aid for Ukraine. The conviction against former Clayton County, Georgia Sheriff Victor Hill is going to stand. The Circuit Court of Appeals rejected a request this week from the African-American former sheriff, who was found guilty 2 years ago of violating the rights of several inmates. He's been in community confinement after serving 10 months in prison, but will also still need to serve 6 years probation. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Can your roof handle extreme weather? If you have leaks or a 20-year-old roof, go to localroofs.com to schedule a free roof checkup. Localroofs.com proudly offers 5-star service with flexible financing, including 0% interest for 18 months on approved credit. Go to localroofs.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Clippers don't have to worry about a game-time decision tonight for Kawhi Leonard. The team found out Tuesday afternoon that their leading scorer will not play in Game 5 against Dallas at Crypto.com. Kawhi still has inflammation in his right knee. This will be the third game Kawhi has missed in the first-round series. The Clippers are 2-0 in this series without Kawhi. In the 2 wins, the Clippers are averaging 21 more points and shooting 50%. Don't get it twisted. No one in Clippers Nation is saying the team can contend for the Western Conference title without Kawhi. For the Clippers to go deep in the NBA playoffs, it's pretty much understood that they will need a healthy Kawhi Leonard. 7 p.m. tip-off tonight on TNT. After 1 month of the Major League Baseball season, Dodgers shortstop Mookie Betts leads the majors with a .377 batting average. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. If we're the ones disproportionately impacted by these climate catastrophes, why should we be silent? Turning up the volume all year long on the climate conversation for KBLA Talk 1580.
When you use Bounce dryer sheets and your clothes look amazing, it's the sheet. Less static in your life? Yeah, it's the sheet. Smelling fresher than ever? It's the sheet. Oh, so soft fabric? Ooh la la. It's the sheet. Less wrinkles on your clothes? You know it's the sheet. Bounce dryer sheets. More freshness, more softness. Less static, less wrinkles. It's the sheet.
Getting quality employees to fill positions in your company is essential, but finding those people can be a major hassle unless you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes finding quality people a breeze. ZipRecruiter's advanced technology identifies candidates with the right skills, sends you great matches, then you can easily invite them to apply. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See for yourself. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/free to try ZipRecruiter for free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Tips to help improve your credit score in 2024. Establishing credit is an important key to achieving financial health, but building a credit history from scratch can feel challenging since you need credit to build credit. First, what does it mean to build credit? All consumers have a score between 300 and 850. You want your score to be as high as possible as lenders look at your credit score to make loan and credit decisions. A good credit score shows you have a track record of borrowing money responsibly. Remember, it's never too late to build or rebuild your credit. This segment is sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase & Company.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
I was just saying to some folk during the break here in the building that these conversations about death aren't always easy to have, and whenever one engages a subject of morbidity, you always take a risk about whether that should be a 30-minute conversation, an hour conversation. One never knows because, again, these are difficult subjects to tackle, difficult conversations to navigate. But that Alua Arthur is all that and then some. That conversation was rich. It was meaningful. It was in depth. I see all of your posts and responses to how much you appreciate that conversation. So I can promise you that Alua Arthur is going to make a cameo again on this program. She'll make a return visit. And there's so much more about her backstory and the work that she does we didn't get to in that 30-minute conversation, but we'll get her back. And I can already see, again, from the response that you enjoy that as much as I did. So thank you to Alua Arthur for just empowering us with that information. And we'll get her back here in the days to come. We close today's show with another great conversation. Amber Cabral is her name. She's an inclusion strategist. And we're going to talk here for a few minutes between now and the top of the hour when we wrap today's program about what it means to just be good humans and how we teach people to be good humans. We're just talking about preparing for that moment that none of us can avoid when we end up doing that dance with mortality, and how we can be better people on the journey. And that's what Amber, so these things kind of segue, they kind of connect. Amber's idea is that there is a way to help teach people how to be good humans and thereby shift the narrative on DE&I. As I said earlier, DE&I is taking on the chin these days. So maybe there's a better way to have a conversation about all of this, and I'm pleased to bring in Amber Cabral now to do just that. Amber, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
If I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I'm doing okay, and good to have you on this program. So let me just get you to unpack that notion of what it means to teach people to be good humans. Isn't that what our parents were supposed to have been doing all along?
I mean, I think a lot of our parents do that. The question is, once you get out in the world, do you carry it with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I often tell people that I teach people to be good humans instead of telling them that I do DEI work, because very often when you say DEI, it either triggers someone or they don't really have a good working knowledge of what it actually means, or it is immersed in a lot of ideas that are not actually helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And so when folks ask me what I do out in the world, my response is typically I teach people to be good humans, which prompts people to go, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
And then I start to explain what I actually do, which is I train, leaders in corporations and nonprofits and, big business and even small business about the ways that we can use, certain skill sets to be able to communicate more effectively with one another, to exercise some compassion, to support one another. And all of those things are really what DEI is about.
I can see why that'd be a great conversation starter, that I teach people how to be a good human. So it is a great conversation starter. So let's start our conversation with that. When people then ask you to unpack what you mean when you say good humans, how do you respond to that? How do you answer that?
What I usually open with is letting folks know that you are engaging with folks whose ideas you are going to disagree with on a regular basis. But those folks still have lots of value. And sometimes what happens is we meet people in environments where we're able to find some commonality and we get along and we laugh and kiki or just have some simple common courtesy and all is well. And then sometimes we end up in a situation where it is revealed to us that maybe they have a perspective that's different than ours about something that we think is important. And sometimes what that also means is we end up treating that person as though that is the only thing that matters about them. We have to be really careful about that. And so I usually make a point to help people to see that folks are not just one thing. And we really do ourselves a disservice when we look at people as though they are just one thing. And we don't want anyone to look at us as though we are just one thing. And so that usually starts people to thinking about, okay, I've got a boss I don't agree with at my workplace, or I've got, somebody on my team that I don't see eye to eye with, or who has a different belief system than what I have. And maybe there's an opportunity here for me to lean into that interaction in a way that's going to be more effective instead of deciding, oh, you think that and I think this. We don't need to engage at all.
Yeah. No, I can see, I received that, Amber, and thank you for that. I can see the way that people could be leery of this notion of good humans because that term can be so subjective. You know where I'm going here. The term can be so subjective because these days when you say what it means to be a good human, I'm not sure there's a universal answer even anymore to what we see as right or wrong, good or bad, fair or unfair, just or unjust. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. But there are some foundational things that I think most of us can agree will help us to engage with one another better. I need people who are going to speak up if something is hurting, harming, or causing them some difficulty, or if it's offensive, because if I don't know, I can't address it. I need people who are brave enough to apologize when they make a mistake. I need to be brave enough to hear said apology when I actually receive one. We also need to be able to have conversations where we're using gender inclusive or even inclusive examples as we're discussing across different identities so that people can actually hear the messages that we're trying to communicate. So there's some foundational things that will make the way we interact with people better, right? And that even if I walk away from you saying, yeah, I don't know that that's a thing that I believe in, support, or want to be around, because I'm in a workplace or I'm in a shared space like a park or a grocery store, there should be some foundational ways that we engage with one another that allow us to walk away and say, I might not be a fan of that, but I can appreciate that you can responsibly engage with me in a way that we can have a discussion about it instead of, myself or you feeling like we're at risk of being harmed.
Yeah. This is not foreign to you. You've heard it more times, I'm sure, than you can count. On the one hand, you said as part of these foundational things, you want people to be courageous enough and willing enough to speak up when they're being hurt, harmed, or put upon in some way that is unfair or unjust. And yet, when people of color tend to do that, you know where I'm going again. When black people tend to do that, you can be labeled as being too sensitive and too soft. And to that, you say what, Amber Cabral?
To that, I say you should pick up my book, Say More About That, because there's a way to say everything. And I go through lots of scripts and tips to help you be able to do that. But at the end of the day, often what happens is when we want to speak up about something, we've got our feelings about it, and our feelings about it can take over what we are trying to communicate. Now, that's not to say that we are not speaking up at times and misunderstood. That's absolutely true. That's also not saying that we're not speaking up in circumstances where there is potential for us to be misunderstood because people are committed to that. But very often what's happening is I have worked myself into a place where I'm frustrated and the words that I'm communicating are communicating that frustration. But we can put people in the position to be accountable for their behavior. So instead of me maybe saying, I think it's offensive when you blah, 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 I may instead take an approach that says, I'm not sure I follow what you mean when you said Because now I'm putting the onus on you, the person who delivered the message, to clarify that, to take accountability for it, and to give me the understanding I need to be able to react to it appropriately. Yeah. And so a lot of it is just taking tactics that I think a lot of us haven't really considered and using them in the way that we engage with people, particularly when we are concerned that we want to, raise or call attention to something that has been offensive or inappropriate, or we're concerned that we may put ourselves at risk. There's a way to say everything. Yeah. And so the key is to figure out what's the way to say it here.
Yeah. Somebody taught me many, many years ago, and it's something I still struggle with every day to learn it better. There's some lessons you learn once and the other lessons you learn perennially. I believe, and I've said on this program before, there is nothing that we ever have to say or do to or with another human being that we cannot find a way to say or do in love. There's nothing that we ever have to say or do with another human being that we cannot find a way. Not always easy, sometimes a struggle, but there's always a way to say whatever you have to say in love. You take my point, why that is a lesson that we learn perennially, not just once. Her name is Amber Cabral. She's an award-winning inclusion and equity strategist, certified coach, and author of 2 acclaimed books, including Allies and Advocates, and the one she referenced moments ago, Say More About That, as well as her own podcast called Guilty Privilege. When we come forward, I want to probe not just those books, but her TED Talk. In her TED Talk, very popular TED Talk, she focused on 3 steps to better connect with your fellow humans. What are those 3 steps? We'll let Amber unpack that when we come forward, and I'm curious as to what extent she's willing to admit that the reason why she uses that phrase, good humans, as a description for what she does is because the acronym DEI is such a dirty acronym these days. It's a dirty word. People hate it. They push back against it. They politic against it. That and more when we come forward. Amber Cabral on Tavis Smiley.
From the Mert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, a Pfizer vaccine.
So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine. It can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just 1 dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
Some days I cover up because of my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Now I'm hitting the road with clearer skin thanks to Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. With Skyrizi, 3 out of 4 people achieved 90% clearer skin at 4 months. And Skyrizi is just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist-prescribed biologic in psoriasis. And visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKY-RIZZI to learn more.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
This is Tavis Smiley in conversation with Amber Cabral, who is an award-winning inclusion and equity strategist. Pleased to have her on, learning so much from her. I told you that first half hour was amazing. This is just as good. Learning a lot in this hour today, as I hope you are as well. All right, Amber, watching my timer, let me move a little more swiftly here. So how much are you willing to admit to me that your use, which I love, of the term good humans as your vocation, your avocation, has to do with the pushback of the dirtiness these days that people try to associate with DEI and this anti-woke war?
I am 100%. And I am absolutely being creative with my language. I think we have seen throughout history the necessity to be creative with our language. I think this is a time for that. And my goal is honestly to be effective. And so if I need leaders and people in the world who are going to be effective, responsible communicators, who can apologize, who can manage uncomfortable convos, and that means I have to open with good humans, I am willing to do that. We'll get to DEI. We will get to allyship. But I can open with what is going to make you listen so that we can have an effective discussion. And you can perhaps pick up a few skills, even unintentionally.
Yeah.
So, yes, I definitely do that, for sure.
Unintentionally, even. I like that. Is it your sense that those persons in the world who don't look like you and me, that is to say those who don't have melanin in their skin in this particular moment, are interested truly in allyship?
I'll be very honest with you. I don't know if I care if they're interested. What I do care about is what they do. And I think that we have enough workplaces that necessitate that we figure out how to collaborate and get things done together in an effective way, that people have a vested interest in figuring out how to make the work work. And so if I can show up and give you the tools to make the work work, what you personally believe is not my personal business. And so I'm going to leave you to it in most cases. Now, that's not to say that I don't have a vested interest in that when I'm looking at making my, my voting decisions. But there are a lot of circumstances where that's not my concern. I want you to behave differently, and I want you to behave responsibly, and I'm going to provide the tools for you to do that and hold you accountable for it.
All right, so I'm going to tease you now with what we're going to cover in our remaining moments with Amber Cabral when we come forward. And here's the tease. She gave a very, very popular TED Talk, and the focus was 3 steps to better connect with your fellow humans. Those 3 steps are: acknowledge that we all have privilege, be willing to recognize the differences and extend empathy to others, and 3, extend your privilege to others. Those are the 3 steps to better connect with your fellow humans. When we come forward in our remaining moments, we'll let Amber Cabral unpack those for us on Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive, unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Stay Housed LA has the resources you need to know your rights and the legal support to back them up. The COVID-19 pandemic has cost people their jobs and livelihoods. This has left an estimated 1/3 of households not being able to make rent and facing losing their homes. This is a fear no one in our community should have to face. You have rights, though, and Stay Housed LA is here to help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between the County of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles, and local community and legal service providers. Together, they provide tenants with the information and support needed to exercise their rights so they can remain safely in their homes. Find out more about your rights by participating in a virtual tenant workshop. Get the legal assistance you need. Find additional resources in Los Angeles County and the City of Los Angeles. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA County for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. Stay connected to Stay Housed LA for updates. This and more at stayhousedla.org. That's stayhousedla.org. Or call their hotline at 213-694-0040. We've got your black with a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Amber Cabral on Tavis Smiley, an award-winning inclusion and equity strategist, brilliant in her own right, and delivered a brilliant TED Talk on 3 steps that we can all engage to better connect with our fellow humans. And in the 4 minutes I have left, I'm going to let Amber walk through it any way she chooses. Step number 1, step number 2, step number 3. You got 4 minutes, Amber. I'm passing the mic to you. Take it away.
All right. So if you are interested in engaging with people in a way that is going to be effective, the 3 steps that you want to take are: first, identify your own privilege. Take a look at yourself. What do you have easy access to? What makes your life, less complicated? What kinds of things are you able to do that make your world simple? So that could be simply, I can speak the language in my local community. That could be that I happen to have access to a vehicle. It can be any of those things, right? So identify what privileges you have. The second step is to take a moment and acknowledge who doesn't have access to that privilege. And then figure out why and what that experience is like for them so you can develop some empathy. If I'm in a position where I can speak the language in my community, I can navigate with ease. The person who cannot do that cannot navigate with ease. What potential difficulties are they encountering because of that? And then once we get clear about what folks are experiencing and we have developed some empathy for it, that puts us in a position to be able to extend our privilege to that person. So perhaps I'm in line in the grocery store behind someone who is struggling to communicate. And me and my very broken Portuglish, I'm able to step in and help assist that person if they're engaging with the clerk that's checking them out. So we have to get past this idea that allyship has to be this big, huge thing that's got to take lots of dollars and lots of time. Often what we really need to do is think about in our moment-to-moment, day-to-day experiences, what do I potentially have the power and access to do that someone that is in proximity of me does not? And how am I able to potentially extend that to support their experience? That's what we're mostly looking for, ways to enhance our day-to-day experience. Now, the big dollars and donations and all the things we think about when we hear allyship matter. But part of the reason I opened my TED Talk with I teach people to be good humans is that we get to the big dollars and the huge impacts by having people that have the ability to empathize with others when they compare the experiences that they're having with the experiences that someone else is having. And that can be a racial equity matter, but it can also be something that has something to do with more common things, like I eat differently than you do, or I happen to have access, like I said, to a vehicle and you don't. And so I think thinking about privilege in a broader way can help us be in a better position to be able to engage in our communities more responsibly.
Oh, she's good. I gave her 4 minutes and she yielded back a minute and a half. That's how good she is. She nailed that thing in less than 4, which gives me time for 2 quick follow-ups, or maybe 1 quick follow-up. I'll go back to the very beginning of those 3 steps about privilege. Why do you think so many of us then, given what you just laid out, still engage in ways that deny our privilege, the privilege that we do have, or put another way, take it for granted?
Because we are taught to be ashamed of it.
Mm.
We are taught that we should be the same as everyone else. And when we have a little bit extra, we hide it or we squirrel it away or we pretend it doesn't exist because it can cause us to have a sense of shame or it can make us feel guilty because someone near us or someone we care about doesn't have it. So it's a socialized behavior. But instead of being embarrassed by it, why don't we figure out a way to apply it? That's a more impactful use of our actual privilege.
Mm. Love me some Amber Cabral. This is an amazing conversation. Her books, once again, you can find Allies and Advocates is one. Say More About That is another. Her podcast is Guilty Privilege. Her TED Talk you can find anywhere on the internet. Again, that's Cabral, Cabral is her last name. Her first name is Amber. And Amber, I have enjoyed this conversation immensely. Thank you for your work and your witness, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great discussion.
No, I enjoyed you sharing your privilege with us, so thank you for that. Just like that, 3 hours gone. Back here tomorrow, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Until then, what a blessing it was to sit in this seat today. What an amazing show, and I'm leaving here feeling a little better, a little more empowered, a little more, more empowered. That's it. All right, thank you. Until tomorrow, and as always, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thanks for joining us on the